Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Any motions?
Motion to approve agenda.
Motion by Bryce,
Second.
second by Amanda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is adopted. So we have a couple presentations. Let's start with Chief Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. Afternoon, Council. Councilor Carcuff, can you come up here, please? Today is a very special occasion due to COVID. It's about a year and a few weeks past when we would normally do this, but this is something I think is very special to me. When we add a new officer and bring somebody into our law enforcement family, then we do a badge pinning and introduce you to him, and then have him swear the oath of office. So it's a little delayed, but as is everything with COVID. So I'd like to introduce Officer Brenton Carcuff. He is been here a year and a couple of weeks, and he grew up in Shakopee, Minnesota. So he's a local kid, graduated from Shakopee High School. In that high school, he met his fiance, who's also here. Wave. Well, wrong hand. She's supposed to put up the one with the ring, but she doesn't listen. No, just kidding. And they've literally been together since high school. So it's awesome. They both attended St. Cloud State University. Woohoo! Sorry. Yeah. Mankato would have been a better choice, but we can't, do everything. So he was a Husky. Mankato graduated with a criminal justice degree. And while he was there, he worked in the security field for the university for a couple of years. After graduation, moved up back, lives in Jordan, Minnesota, has a house there, and then pursued his career in law enforcement. Worked and got a job as a part-time officer in Cleveland, Minnesota. Worked there, and then went through our process. And at the same time, I like to tell this little story because I'm very proud of it. The law enforcement field is extremely competitive right now. And once we were going through the process and Brent was identified as a candidate, as I have to do now, I have to ask, are you in any other processes? Because we need to know, because police officers are in such demand, as we know. He said, well, yes, I am. As a matter of fact, I also filled out a background packet for a different agency. And I'm like, well, who's your favorite? And being sincerely honest, he named the other agency. So, and I was surprised because I'm like, wow, I'm right here, Brenton, on the phone with you. But, and I go, well, tell me, what are you looking for in a community to serve? And he started rattling off things: smaller town, community-oriented policing, where you make a difference, where you can help the public. And then, so I started pointing out some of the things about that other agency and how it is a bigger community, and the things he was just telling me about, you don't get to do as often as our community. And I was very happy to say by the end of the conversation, we were his first choice of place to work. And how close that conversation was, the officers that Brenton were in the process at that other organization, they were buying their uniforms the next day after we were buying ours. So that's how close it was that he wasn't going to be working for us in a different organization. So I'm very happy, and I know he's happy he made the choice to come to our community, where it really embodies, our community embodies everything he was looking for to police for. So I'm very happy to have him, and we've talked at length about the responsibility of this badge, as cool as it is, what it means for us and our community and our department. We talked at length before I gave it to him the first time. So he's done nothing but represent that every step of the way. He passed probation with flying colors, and we were happy to sign him on and give him his letter stating he's a full-time police officer with us. So With that, I'm going to pin this badge on Brenton. Mayor, if you want to start coming up and you can swear them in. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Get a picture? You want to stand where you're going to flag up the mayor? Take your oath.
Ready for this? I'm ready. Great.
I state your name.
I, Brenton Karkup,
Do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution,
do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution,
laws and ordinances,
laws and ordinances,
and faithfully, and faithfully perform my duties as police officer.
and faithfully perform my duties as a police officer.
Never betray my badge or the public trust.
Never betray my badge or the public trust.
Have courage to and will hold myself and others accountable.
Have courage and hold myself and others accountable.
Promote the vision and mission of the department.
Promote the vision and the
Mission.
mission of the department.
Provide fair and impartial law enforcement.
Provide fair and impartial law enforcement.
Practice community values-based policing.
Practice community value-based policing.
Serve with pride,
Serve with pride,
integrity,
integrity,
and excellence.
and excellence.
And provide quality service
And provide quality service
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Next presentation, Scott County Housing Blueprint presentation.
Mr. Mayor, we have
You ready for us?
Oh, please, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you for taking some time to allow us to kind of go over this housing blueprint today with you. And I think, Tom, am I pushing arrows? What am I doing?
We just have to turn on the projector, correct?
Okay. Thank you to Renee. Renee and I have done these kinds of presentations before with the transportation and economic development plans. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a while ago. One thing to remember, Tom, is that Leslie Vermillion never forgets that you know how to do these things. So I think you've seen the whole plan. The 91-page document has been passed out to you. So Renee, just push buttons.
Yep.
There we go. All right, super. So I'd like to introduce Jody Brennan, who is with the Shakopee City Council and the co-chair of the Housing Task Force. We've been meeting for about a year and a half, and Jody and I have just become co-chairs in the last 6 months. We kind of wore out the last ones, I think, through the process that we're going to go through with you tonight. The one thing that we want to make clear to you, because we've had some comments in our other presentations, we've presented to Shakopee, Savage, and Belle Plaine this week. We made the presentation to Belle Plaine, and we're here tonight. We have one scheduled for Jordan, I believe, in a couple of weeks. Is that what we've been impressed with was the comp plans and the housing sections in the comp plans for each of the communities. And what we want to emphasize to you is that's the basis of this report. Each community has a little different focus, a little different challenge in housing, and it really did help to form the basis of a scale document where hopefully all of the cities in the county can work together to see what each other are doing. Again, each of you have different, are at a different place with housing. I think the other thing that we're seeing in these presentations is there's some sense that this report, and if you've had a chance to look through it, is about one segment of housing, workforce housing or supportive housing. And that's not the case. Tom and I were talking about all the housing, each element of housing from market rate to homeless is, we just don't have enough of any of it. And until we break this logjam open and get some of my generation out of their homes, let some younger people move in, let their kids find places like your new project out by the racetrack, and Tom was telling me your project to the west of here, where young people can stay in this community, or young people who grew up in Lakeville can stay in this area. And I think that's really the message of this report and what we've been encouraged going through the work that we've done over the last year. So I'm not going to read each of these. I think the vision statement is important in that we're ensuring a diverse range of housing options for our residents' entire life or life cycle at an affordable price. I regret in my life not having looked at life cycle housing when I was 20 years old. You're not going to stay in the same house. You're not going to buy a house when you're 20 and be there when you're 80. And the more we plan for those changes, the better it is. When my wife and I sold our property, our family property for 40 years in the east end of Shakopee a couple of years ago and moved into a twin home in Savage about a year and a half ago in February. And what I'm finding, first of all, Renee would appreciate this, I failed retirement, so I hung around the house for about a year, and then I went and got my real estate license, and then Leslie called, so I've been pretty busy ever since that. But in talking to my friends who are in these family homes, they're really having a tough time imagining a different lifestyle, imagining a different type of housing. We take them into our twin home, which is bigger than the home we had. It's about 3,000 feet. It's got one common wall, it's got a yard, it's got a lot of nice people in it. And they sort of can see their way there. Townhomes, condos, apartments, they can't take their tractor there. So that's a problem, and I think that's part of what we're going to see is, and maybe their children can get them out of their house. The blueprint emerged from Scale's Live, Learn, Earn Housing Work Group, which is focused on creating housing options that give people in all stages of life and all economic means viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable houses, and reflects each community's recently adopted comprehensive plans. Keep that. Housing is really critical infrastructure. It's really like your sewer and water and like your all of the other responsibilities the city has. The focus tends to be on structures and units. County and the nonprofits provide programs that support individuals and families seeking various types of housing. The focus in their case tends to be on the person. Other levels of government fund various types of housing. Some dollars follow the structures and units, others follow the person. Renee and Tom are very aware, and I know the council is as well, that a lot of this is grant making, finding the money to build these projects. And from the city's point of view, working with developers to remove barriers or find opportunities or find properties that might work for any one of these types of housing. I'll go back. The process involved community comprehensive plans, as we mentioned, a pre-session survey, some stakeholder interviews. We had 2 community conversations and work sessions. We collected some local data and analysis and projections. And I do have to acknowledge the county staff. They're just a bunch of bright young people working there that are certainly helpful to Jody and I in getting our work done. So we came out of that process with what we thought were these top 3 goals: supporting preservation of sound, well-maintained housing stock by encouraging maintenance and improvements, providing a balanced supply of housing options for all household types, and encouraging distinctive, accessible community design in residential developments to create livable neighborhoods. These goals were common across the city's comprehensive plans. We seem to be very aligned in our highest priorities. Pre-session survey identified a number of different topics and priorities, and I'll let you go through them later. It was completed by 35 members of Scale and partners of Scale. The ones that we came up with at the end, housing preservation was not as big a priority as we thought it might be. Homelessness and specialized housing is a concern to 79% of the people who are involved in setting our goals. Education and advocacy, new housing options, and housing preservation is 7%. Education and housing or advocacy, we hear from city councils in the presentations we've made that they're somewhat frustrated that they've done, maybe in Savage or in Shakopee, 3 or 4 or 5 of these projects, and maybe the first one was 12 years ago, and they still hear the same objections that they heard 12 years ago. And so they, at least at the Savage City Council, are very interested in helping us educate folks about what these challenges are. We had 2 community conversations that shaped the blueprint's priorities, clear interest in making homelessness and specialized housing a focus of the plan. There is all of these different types of housing we've talked about, and the third bullet is market rate is included in this. There is some deep subsidies and subsidized properties throughout this. You can see there's a number of senior projects that are and properties that are needed across the county, as well as foster care corporate locations. The supportive housing, there are 4 types of those housing types: intensive residential treatment services, links or passageways to the next stage in their recovery, residential treatment home or facilities, and corporate foster care locations again. In Elko New Market, the green is the challenge. The green is what we're short. Since 2016, 2019 demand, and 2016 to 2019 actual, and what's left to build based on these numbers from 2019. So a challenge pretty much across the board. Market rate housing, a lot of demand. You've created a lot of demand, I think. Shallow subsidies and deep subsidies, single family and multifamily continue to be in short supply. With that, I think, Councilman Brennan, I'll let you get into the details.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today, Mayor Julius and council members. We, like Fred said, we had a group of 35 people that we surveyed to determine what the needs were in Scott County and prioritize what those needs are. So we have 4 priorities that we had come up with. Priority A was homelessness and specialized housing. Priority B was education and advocacy. Priority C was new housing options. And priority D was housing preservations. And we realized that each city has a different needs, and we identified, and we realized that you're going to work the best you can in your community and not take what our word is and implement it. It's up to you to take this information and put it into the best use as possible. We have the next 4 pages will go through different things that we found in those pillars: supportive housing and permanent homes for individuals and families. And I know that you have workforce housing that you're working on currently, which is great. And senior residents with housing challenges or people with disabilities. In Shakopee, we just approved renewing a senior housing with Section 8 or the I can't remember, housing choice vouchers, and it was an apartment complex that was already established, but that's definitely a need that we still need to provide in the greater Scott County, and it goes on through the rest of the these information that's up there. Section B is education and advocacy, and thank you. And education, what we found is that a lot of people don't understand what the needs are in the communities. So it's education and letting people know that this is not a negative by opening up, providing housing. It's an opportunity for your cities to grow and develop and to provide support for your businesses. So education is very important. In Shakopee, we've had some residents who have been against housing developments, and it's just working and providing different information out there. And also providing information to the different city councils so they can make best decisions. Number C is the new housing opportunities, and we know that MHFA is, sorry, I keep forgetting to flip the page. We know that MHFA is a very difficult program for our developers to get funding from, and we are trying to support the cities in obtaining those funding sources. Our committee yesterday met and we provided a letter of support for Elko Market and also the city of Shakopee on another project. So we hope that that will provide you some leverage when your developer is trying to get an MHFA funding. We know that we need to increase the affordable housing for seniors like we spoke about, encourage opportunities for home ownership, and financially invest in new housing development. And then there's a couple other ones on there. And letter D is housing preservation. We know that not everybody, sorry, I forgot to press the button.
Down.
Not everybody wants to live in an apartment, but it's how do we support those smaller homes in your community, and give you some ideas on how to do that. So it's not, so the flow and turnover of those homes is made available for new families and lower income residents. Okay, I think we're almost done here. I'm not really sure which this page is. So our prioritize our next steps is we're working on finalizing the draft of the blueprint, and we don't really call it finalizing. I think it's something that will continue to change and continue to grow with the community. So we'll be reviewing it continually to make sure that it's up to date and it's addressing your needs. Number 2 is provide scale and city community input meetings like we're doing here, and we also provided that at scale also. Number 3 is incorporate community input in the blueprint, so getting people to speak up and tell us what they need. And 4 is to implement the blueprint and put it in your hands and let you work with it the best way that you find for your community. I think that's it. We meet once a month. We're always looking for new people to come in and talk about what their community needs and see if they can help the greater community of Scott County, and tell us your thoughts.
I think some of you are aware of the Maxfield studies that are done every 5 years, I think, something like that. There will be, I think there was a contract just last week to have them do another one this fall, and they're starting to work on that. And they've also, because of the blueprint, incorporated some new questions in that survey. So I think once we see that data, we'll be ready to run in 2022. Sorry, 19. Aging myself.
Do you have any questions for us on things, or do you want to have a conversation about anything, or you know how to get a hold of us and Mr. Terry and Mayor Julius?
Or any sense of the community? Is this not an issue in this community yet, generally?
Well, I guess for me, one of the questions I had was, because I think we have a similar challenge in the education aspect, and people assuming that if we're building an apartment building, it's a Section 8 apartment building, or if we're offering TIF, then we're having issues. So I was curious about what kind of education you've provided to be able to.
Well, we haven't provided direct education. It's coming out to your community and talking to the city councils. We face that same thing in Shakopee, and I think every community in Scott County is doing the same thing. For us, it was just constant reassuring the community and talking to people individually and letting them know Some things that we faced in Shakopee was, there was a train coming from Minneapolis and it was going to drop off people in Shakopee, and it's like, how did they come up with that? And it's trying to.
That happened here not
Yeah,
that long ago.
and it's trying to, reassure everybody that this is actually good for our community. It's supporting our businesses in our community, and those are people that will be better off in the long run to have housing and have housing that they will eventually own. And TIF, I haven't had direct with TIF in housing, but we've had TIF in economic development. And, it's just making sure that you're always sending out the same messages on what TIF is actually going to do for your community.
But we would be interested in, if you get questions, that maybe we can start to develop some answers to those questions.
Sure.
That would be helpful. I think, there are some, in these presentations we've made, there are some residents who think the cities are coming up with the money for these projects, and that's not the case in most cases. There are smart people like Tom and Renee and others who know how to write grants, and we've been very successful. Lisa Freeze on the transportation side of things as well. So I think basically it's the cities are starting to understand, if they know the numbers, what the demand is for some of these projects, see an opportunity with a developer to maybe a piece of property. I know in Savage, if you know where the high school is in Shakopee, or in Savage, just to the north of that, that was highway right-of-way that was left. And the county turned it over to the city, and it was about 5.5 acres, and that was enough to build that project. So there are opportunities that cities know that can help, or as you're planning developments, there may be some opportunities like the one by the racetrack where there's a piece of property that may be sitting on its own and doesn't quite fit into the rest of the development. I think those are the challenges for the cities, and the county can be helpful through the CDA and through the housing department at the county, looking for funding to make these projects work. I think there is funding, and one of the things that I hope, or I'm worried about right now, is moratorium is ending on rents. If people haven't been able to keep up with their rents, we may see some people defaulting in that process. The other side of that project is the state, I don't know whether you saw it, just announced that they had another $1.6 billion in May. So we do have surpluses. There's a lot of federal money, and I think those are great opportunities for, whether it's housing or anything else the cities are doing, to maybe accelerate some development, hopefully. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
You for the
Thank you very
invitation.
much.
Thank you.
I appreciate all your work on the housing committee.
Thank
was
you.
on there a long time ago. It's
Yeah,
a lot of fun, but a lot of work.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is public comment. Is there anyone here who cares to speak under public comment? Nope. All right.
Consent agenda. Anyone have anything you want pulled or have quick questions on?
The only question I had is looking at the part-time officer, noting the funds that were only needed were the funds to the actual cost of hiring and what those are. Because but they're budgeted hours, but it said that the only costs incurred would be to the actual hiring of the officer.
Correct, so you would be looking at the cost of doing psychological, any incidental costs for background checks, like mileage to have, go somewhere, check those things out, and you'd have to equip that officer. So that could, those types of things of officer equipment, like uniform, officer equipment, basically your leather and all the tools and everything, that can potentially be accommodated within the existing budget depending on other demands throughout the year. But those are really the costs, because the actual hours for the officer, we have budgeted.
Yeah, I understood that. I just wanted to know what the actual, is there a dollar amount assigned to that?
What's the number?
Rough estimate. I know that.
You're talking a few $100s for the psychological. You're talking, I mean, you're probably talking outfitting the officer top to bottom is what, Brady?
So it depends on what equipment coming in. Our newest hire that starts Jan 1 is bringing a lot of his equipment that he had to the table. So we're looking at hundreds of dollars. But to outfit, if the new candidate does not have body armor, there's grant money for that. Our out-of-pocket's about $1,000. Uniform is another $500 to $600. We already own the firearm. We already own the radio. So $2,000.
Okay,
At the
that's
most.
cheap. That's what I was just wondering.
Yeah, it's really, it depends on what they bring on board. And a lot of the equipment we have, so it's just interview, if we do a process, it'll be the officer's time for interviews, it'll be the psychologicals, 500, physical, medicals, another 500, I think, we just did, 600. So it's really just a few thousand.
Yeah, so we're not talking 10,000 or 20,000
No.
or anything like
No.
that. Okay, that's all I was curious about.
We have body camera, we have taser, we have a lot of those big ticket, as we grow, it could easily be 10 grand with a $1,000 body camera, $1,000 taser, $600 gun, equipment, body armor, but with this, we're not anticipating that.
Okay,
So with that, any motions?
motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Bryce, second by Amanda, all in favor?
Aye?
Aye. Consent agenda passes. We have no public hearings, we have no general business, we're on to reports. Tom, administration.
I have nothing in this council, has anything for me?
Corey's not here. Brady?
We just today got our squads all redone, and so you're gonna see the new graphic cars. I have some pictures that I'll put in next month's report. And then our signs came in for our safe exchange zone at the front of City Hall in the corner here. So Corey will get those up as soon as he has staff time to do so. And the signs turned out awesome, they're in my office, so we're excited to be able to promote that with Facebook posts coming up. Other than that, that's it.
All right. Nothing for fire, I'd assume. Engineering.
Two quick items. I gave you a little report about the sewer across the road. At the last meeting, we've, I wouldn't say we've abandoned, but we have set aside the idea of cutting across the wetland. Corey kind of convinced me that we should take another look at other options. We are working with your pump supplier for all of your wastewater stations around in New Prague at a lower cost prepackaged sort of station that might cut that big initial pump station cost down and make that a more viable option, much less intrusive. The pipe we would put in is probably 2 inches, and we could do that without trenching. And so that gives us a lot of flexibility. So get back to you when we have some answers on that. And we're getting the band back together Tuesday night. We're doing the highway cleanup after missing a year because of the pandemic on 91 from County Road 2 down to 86. My crew is coming here at 4:30. If anybody wants to come and say hello, that would be great. And then we'll head out, do the cleanup, and head over to Firehouse for a bite to eat afterwards. So you're welcome to join in any step of the way.
We appreciate it. The Bolton crew, how?
I think I have about 14 signed up.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, we'll go real fast.
Well, there's a lot of trash.
All right, fine, be pessimistic.
Well, realistic.
We're go faster than if you only had stuff.
Well, and then you got to stop for wood ticks, so it's,
No,
I'll leave it to engineers to.
you can bring my neighbor's chickens with you.
that's it.
Thank you, Rich. Community development.
Have any updates, unless you have any questions? Maybe note that we're closing on the property acquisition next door on Monday.
Nice. All
Any
right.
questions?
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Parks, any updates from parks? Probably not.
I'm just gonna note for anyone who watches the recording that in 1 week is the first farmer's market, so just want that out there.
Can't wait to get some
Second.
salsa.
Motion. All right.
Excited. Some good salsa.
I'm excited. I mentioned to Tom before we started, I'd love it if we could do some sort of ribbon cutting or something. I don't know, it'd be cool to do something. I'll be there at the beginning. I'm sure most of you will be there too, so it'd be cool to do something. CCEC.
We meet next Tuesday.
Okay. Scale, not much to, I mean, we have, well, scale general meetings tomorrow will be legislative update, get to meet some of the people, at least via Zoom, from New Credit River City. From the executive committee, the biggest, really the most notable thing that came out of that is in August, because there's no July scale stuff. In August, they'll be back to in-person. It'll technically be hybrid, so if you're interested in seeing the meeting, you can still log in via Zoom, but the best scale meetings are always in person, that I've found, so. That's it for scale, or, sorry, service delivery.
Meetings in a couple weeks.
Okay. There's no unified transit update. MVTA,
No reports.
I-35.
I attended this morning on behalf of Councilmember Schwenke because he had a conflict. They adopted the annual budget. It does sound like the Orange Line will be operational by the end of the year. And it sounds like the bridge project on I-35 across the river is wrapping up in the very near future.
Wow, nice.
Did Credit River join too? I thought I saw something in the notes.
There is some discussion they're offering for Credit River to basically have a free remainder of the year to test drive it
Oh.
and see if they want to be a paying member going forward. I think they did something similar for us way back in the day. I know that Councilmember Wolf during the meeting indicated he had talked to them, but they're swamped right now. They just had their first regular council meeting. They're just still trying to figure out where the bathrooms are, so to speak. I mean, they have to get the very basics set up. So that, I think their decision on that will be forthcoming in the future later this year.
All right, Chamber of Commerce, Bryce, unless you wanted to speak on behalf, you don't have to.
Golf tournament is coming up 25th.
Yep.
So, I think the biggest thing is we have a great turnout for sponsorship, but we'd love to have as many golfers as we can. Be a fun time.
All right. Discussion by council. Not motions.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Amanda.
I'll second it.
That's the second by Bryce, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.